My dad was my best friend. He was.
So his John.
Yeah, his name was John
What was his
Edward.
middle name?
John Edward. And they called him Jack all the time. He was never known by John, it was Jack. But while we were growing up, talk about discipline. That was interesting. And I don't know how I ever came about it, but he never had to correct me or spank me like he did the other kids. He'd just look at me, kind of, give me a look, and I would just melt. I knew I was doing something wrong, and I always wanted to please him. I really did. I always wanted to please. I would do things to please him. Maybe that's wrong. Some people might call it brown nosing, but I just wanted to, and they appreciated it. So that makes it nice too. He was a lot of fun. He never made a lot of money, and some have criticized him because he never was interested in making money. He was very, very good. He would have been a tremendous engineer. With mechanical engineer, he would have been fantastic. He tried. He had actually made a chainsaw grass mower. Actually, what it would look just like a chainsaw today, only it was 12 feet long.
Okay.
But before that, they had this grass mower would be sickle, and it would be back and forth and rattle and wear out and everything. So he thought that this would work, and near grass it worked beautifully. He went to Dearborn even, to the Ford Motor Company, where they made tractors and so on, and they said they tried it, and if they hit a piece of wire, with it, it would just tear it up. And he said it's just too dangerous. It just isn't commercially viable.
Okay.
I still think they made the chainsaw from that idea. Because it was the same thing. On a chain, had the little knobs on it to cut grass. And anyhow, my brother Lawrence was my older brother. I never knew him well because when I was about 5, he left because he was older and he went to work in Minnesota at farms and stuff, and his relatives. And my brother Don and I had a lot of fun together.
And he's how much old? How old is Don?
Don was 10 years older than I.
And Lawrence was.
Lawrence was just about 20 years older.
When you were 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, he wasn't that much. But see, I was 5. He was 10. 15. And Lawrence was probably 20, 18 or something like that.
Right.
Irregardless. So then, and Don then went into World War II. They were both drafted, but Lawrence failed because he had flat feet. He got deferred from the service because he had flat feet. So he went to Texas, and he started selling insurance, I guess. And then he ended up going to San Diego working for
Convair.
Yeah.
So that's Don. Then so it's just the 3 brothers, you and
2.
Don,
Yeah, that's just mm-hmm.
and then the sisters.
Yeah. Helen was the oldest. She was the matriarch of the house, and then it was Evie, my sweetheart, and then Luella, who was just 4 years older than I, something like that.
Okay.
And then Sandy came along 10 years after I was born. So there's a real spread in the family, I'll tell you, in years. So the only one left now is Luella and myself. So, well, I was born at Hector, Minnesota, in 1930 in September, and lived there for 2 years until my dad was renting a farm from my father-in-law, for his father-in-law, my mom's dad, and the house burned down. What had happened is the chimney between the attic and the roof developed a leak, and it started a fire up in the attic. And it's a long story about that. They set me out by an apple tree and went in to try to get some things from the house before it burned. But after it burned, then we moved to near Edgeley on a farm, and it was in 1932, 33, where the drought was so bad in North Dakota that you couldn't even grow enough grass to feed one cow. And he tried really hard to make it go. I remember different things about that year. The kids had to go to school in a rural school, and we'd take them over by horse and buggy, a horse and, not a buggy, but a wagon. And then I would play in the driveway once in a while, get some nails and try to drive them in, what kids do with nails, and I caught a little trouble with that. But then after that, and we moved to Edgeley, which is a little town in North Dakota. And he rented a stall, maybe a 2-car garage stall from a gentleman had a blacksmith shop, and he had a little extra space. So Dad could use that space and work on cars. So that's what he did. I went to school there in Edgeley then, and I went to kindergarten, and then went to grade school and graduated from high school there. Oh, during that time, there was a river that went through Valley City, and we had an electric power plant powered by water from a dam. And my cousin and I were walking along the river, and we were throwing bottles and cans in the water. At one point, one bottle didn't get in the river. It was right on the edge of the river. And I said, I'll go get that. And he said, you better not. And so I threw a rock down there, and the ice didn't break right where it was. So I went down there to pick up the bottle, and just as I was picking up the bottle, the ice broke, and I went in the water. And of course, couldn't swim at all. But my mom had made a sheepskin jacket for me, a regular kind of a longer coat from another jacket. But it was very warm and very buoyant, so that held me up in the river. And then my cousin was able to pull me out, pull me out of the river. And that was a nice experience, I'll say. So.
How old were you when that happened?
Pardon me?
How old were you when that happened with the ice?
5.
You're 5 years old?
Mm-hmm. My cousin was 6.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was Georgie Laffen. When my brother Don went into World War II, came home in like 45, Dad got an old barn, bought it and tore it down from out in the country, and we brought it into town and built a garage. It was a nice one too. It was really good, sturdy, had big timber, and but it was probably about 60 feet long, 30 wide. So it was a big garage. Put a lot of stuff in it. He did a lot of valve job, rings, put in rings and stuff. And my job was to take the pan down. After, you hoist the car up, and then I'm sitting under there in the mud and the dirt and the gunk and taking the pan down. A lot of good buddies. Had 3 of us were dear friends. One was a pastor's son, David Zapp. One was a kid by the name of Dale Schultz, and myself. We were together all the time. I'm sure you have friends that you're with, and we were together all the time. Never got into any serious trouble. We never did do any drinking or smoking because, couldn't afford it, number one, and then number 2, it was just didn't appeal at that time. We were busy. A big occupation was Walther League at church. We were all members of the Walther League. That was our biggest gathering. Not too much at school because we weren't. None of us were sports. We weren't football, we weren't basketball, we weren't baseball. So we were not involved in sports in school. So that was a different group of people, a different category, different group. You just don't go into that group, But we did a lot of hunting, an awful lot of hunting, tearing around in cars a lot of times when we shouldn't have been, but we had fun. And then we'd go to dances and so on, but normal, never got into any serious. The fact is that I was a senior and I hadn't skipped school. A lot of people skip school. It's one of the big things, and so I was a senior and hadn't skipped school yet, so three of us decided we better skip school once to say that we did. And so we did, and then of course my sister is a teacher at school, so found out about that and caught a little bad time about that. So
That was Helen?
pardon me?
That was Helen?
That was Helen. My sister Helen was a teacher there. I got into real trouble one time. I was acting in a play. I was a lead actor in Huck Finn. And during the time we were practicing, the sewer or water main broke, one of the two, and they had to close duo for a day. And it was right at the height of the pheasant season. So no school today, but we're going to have play practice. And I said, oh, come on. Yeah, I said, well, I'll be there tomorrow. Play went off good, so. And I got an award for play acting or something when I graduated or something like that. But I didn't get involved in the senior play. That was my junior year. So I didn't even go out for junior. They called me, but I didn't. So then, after I graduated from high school, I had a chance to go work at a hardware store in Edgeley at Cy Mazzaro's hardware store. Same money, so I could stay at home, and it was like a big bonus to me. So I did. I moved to Edgeley and worked in the hardware store and joined the National Guard at that time. A lot of the guys were in the Guard, and extra money, and what the heck was I enjoyed it. Well, in 1951, when Korea War broke out, why they activated the National Guard, and we went to Camp Rucker, Alabama, for basic training. And after we had really been through basic training, but we had some recruits with us, so we'd have to show them how to shoot and how to do this. And I had one kid from New York, and he had probably never shot a gun before, but we were shooting the Browning BARs, and had it on full automatic, and it gets pretty hot, So he had it in his hands, and he shot it, and he somehow he didn't want it, and he handed it to me. Well, he handed it to me barrel down, and right across my hand was that red hot barrel, Ooh, I could have just, after the advanced basic was over, then they started to assign people different places. They didn't keep us together as a unit. Some people went here and some people went there. Some went to Korea, some went to Germany, some went to Washington, somebody, Well, anyhow, they sent me to school at Fort Riley, Kansas. I was a aerial photograph interpreter. I had nothing to do with taking pictures. I just read them, and graduated from that, and got on a train from Alabama from there and went to San Francisco, and they sent me by airplane to Korea. So I landed in Hawaii and to Wake Island and then to Tokyo. And then took a ship from there over we landed at Incheon. That was after, of course, the original invasion. Then I ended up being at the air base, at Kimpo Air Base in Korea for a short time, until I was assigned to the 3rd Infantry Division, which was up on the line north of Seoul. So I went up there and served as a NCO in charge of the group of interpreters. I think there were 6 of us. And all we did is, after the Air Force took pictures, they'd send them to us, give them to us, and then we'd analyze them or whatever they wanted. They wanted maps, or we'd make maps, or if they wanted to. What we really were looking for hard is gun emplacements, because they were digging new emplacements and putting tanks in them and so on and so forth. So we were trying to find those. And as soon as we find one way, we could assign either artillery or air to investigate or to bomb it out, So it was a good experience. And then, of course, my enlistment was up. So they had to send me home. And I could have re-enlisted, but at that time, I wasn't ready to. I only made $75 a month as a sergeant. So, I was tired of pinching pennies. I'd done that all my life, and I wanted to get out in the world and make some money, When I got home, there was an insurance agent. There was basically only one.
What year was it you got back home from Korea?
Fall of '53.
Okay.
And anyhow, I got there, and there was an insurance agent that was basically only one in town other than the bank. And he had passed away. So I went and talked to her, and I said, I'd like to be able to buy your agency. And she said, well, it sounds like a good idea. I didn't know what I was going to do anyhow, so I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give you a third of the residuals for 3 years. So it was fine. So I went to Fargo, and I went to work for Northwestern Life Insurance Company, and they paid me as a beginning agent. And I tried real hard to sell insurance, and I was 23, 24 years old and single and nothing. It just didn't work. Didn't know anybody, and they don't give you prospects. They just you go get your own.
Got it.
So anyhow, I had my license, and that's what I really, really wanted. So I got that, and then got back to Edgeley, and she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I sold it to the bank." So I didn't have anything to go on. I thought I'd try it for a while, which I did, and it was just a little kid that doesn't know anything about. Really, I didn't know anything about insurance, if you want to know the truth. So it didn't work out. So then I went to Lemoore, and I thought I'd like to sell cars. There was a Ford dealer in Lemoore, and that was 15 miles away from Edgeley, just to the east. So I went there. I was there for, I think probably 6 months, and they wanted me to stay in Edgeley and sell in Edgeley. Well, you can't sell if you haven't anything to show them, And of course, they were hoping I could find somebody that wants to buy a car. Well, that isn't real easy to do. You're not in the mood to come out of the bar and say, let's go look for a car, So I did that for a while, but again, there wasn't any advancement, it was an okay job. And in fact, it was a good job. And you just had to do a report and give you a list of people to call on and do your reports, and that was all. Well, anyhow, that didn't work out. So then all else failed, and I'm running out of money, so I got to go back to Red Owl. So I went to work at the Red Owl store in Valley City, and I was produce manager there. And then they transferred me to Jamestown, and I worked there as produce manager. And then they transferred me to Moorhead. Well, when I got to Moorhead, they're putting together some kind of a food show. It was at the Crystal Ballroom. We had to go set up for the show. Well, as we were setting up, that's where I met Marge. She was working as a part-time checker at the Red Owl store.
And what year was that?
1953. And so, so I met Marge, and we worked together at the Moorhead store, and she was going with some guy, and a guy from Detroit Lakes. And and I thought, well, she's much too pretty for me to date or anything like that. But anyhow, long story, she agreed to go out with me, and so we went out, and we hit it off real good, and she was working, then she was going to college when she worked at the Red Owl, and so she got 1 year of college in, and then I came along. So then after we were going together for quite a while, she was working there, and we decided to get married. So I proposed on June of 1954, and we got married on June 1955. So during that time, we were still working at Moorhead, and when we got married, they transferred me to Minot, North Dakota. So I was there for probably almost a year doing produce manager. So then they sent me to Moorhead to train manager trainee. I remember that very well. Made $100 for 100 hours, scheduled for 100 hours a week. So we went then to Minot, where they were building a new store on the South Hill of Minot, brand new Red Owl. Howie was born there in Minot. Greg was born in Fargo earlier, and so Howie was born there with all the problems that associated with that. So we went, Minot went real well, and then he wanted me to go to Chicago. And I said, should I, shouldn't I, should I, should I? If I don't, they're going to not look at me for promotion. If I do, I don't want to go. So we decided to go. And it was quite an adventure. It was something I'm glad I did. It was very, learning, but it didn't work. It just didn't work. So from being a pretty successful guy all the years with Red Owl, it turned out to be a pretty, not too good a guy, because nothing worked. And it wasn't our fault. It was just everybody was in the same boat. I had bought a house in the south side of Chicago, and moved to St. Cloud, Minnesota, and helped get a manager change at Little Falls for a little while, and then worked at a Red Owl on the west side of Minot. And then they built a new one downtown in a shopping center, and then I was manager of that. They transferred me to Minneapolis to open a Cashway store, the discount stores, and whoever ill-conceived the idea of it, I don't know, because it was built just like a regular store, regular same stuff on the shelf, nothing different, but yet, and the pricing was lower. They expected us as managers to run that store on 20% less payroll. That's a bunch, I couldn't do it. We didn't have that kind of volume they apparently thought, well, there'd be tons of volume. Well, if they wrote an ad and it was so terrible working there, it was really stressful. They'd write an ad where they'd give away butter and real big items that everybody uses, and the store would be full of people. Well, you didn't have any help, so they'd be lined up, and then the next week they wouldn't put a good item in the ad, and then nobody would come. So you didn't have any regular customers. All you had was price-conscious customers. So I quit. I just couldn't. First of all, well, sometime before I quit, I was working at a store, and Marge went into labor on Sunday night, and took her to the hospital, and I wanted to be with her, and they made me work. I couldn't even be with her while Miles was born. I should have quit that day, but when you didn't have nothing, don't have a job, you don't have any extra money, what do? You can't, you just can't do it. And not like today, it's a little easier to move around today.
Affected my life. Wow.
Yeah, jobs weren't that the good jobs weren't that good at that time. So, I'm kind of wandering here. But anyhow, then we moved back to St. Cloud. Well, from Minneapolis then. Okay, then Nash Finch transferred us to Fargo. And so then I went to work with Nash Finch in Fargo, doing the same thing. And in about 2 years into that, then the Broadway Jack and Jill came up for sale. And I talked to Herman, and I said, I'd like to buy your store. And he said, oh golly, that's good, I'm about ready to sell. So I borrowed money from Marge's mom and dad, and I refinanced the house. At that time I had a house in Moorhead. Refinanced that, got all the money I could scrape together and put down on the store. And the store was a boomer. It was really good. And it was a good money maker and everything. So from there on, then we went to expand, built the Golden Ridge store.
So what year was it? What year was
71.
it? 71. You bought the Broadway.
1971 bought Broadway. Yep. But that one was good. That was a good store. A very, very good store. Golden Ridge never amounted to what I would hoped it did. You know, it was there and we did some business, but it was not a good money maker. University was okay. But then then a guy bought it and turned it into a video store. Doing real good. Man, I went by there one day and there wasn't a place to park, any place. And that's West Lawton or
They
any
do those board games kind of thing, right?
They play regular games, or do you know anything about it?
Yeah, we won ones, right?
Yeah, well, they
You have to save one.
yeah they got the Star Wars games. They have these tournament board games or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah, whatever. I don't know. But concerning me, did I tell you about my last checkup, health checkup?
I think you did, but for the record, say it again.
Oh, yeah. I went in and the doctor said, well, see you next year. Said there's nothing. He said we're not even going to do blood or anything. He said you're fine. He said see you next year. So I don't know. I can't remember the last day I was sick for not going out or anything. I can't remember it, how long it's been. I just never get sick.
That's pretty good.
I was pleased enough to have a beautiful, beautiful wife, mother, children. And we learned to live together as a happy family, and I don't remember ever getting into a heated argument with Marge. You know, we've always had differences, but I don't remember ever. You know, we went to church every Sunday, and couldn't have been better. I'd love to do it over again.
What was your fondest memory of Mormor?
Oh my gosh, so many of them. It isn't. You couldn't even begin to. The fondest memory that I live with is when we were in bed. She would lay on my arm, and she'd say, "Oh, this is my favorite place to be," you know. And that's yeah. But other than that, everything. God, just everybody should be blessed to have somebody like that in their life.
Absolutely.
I didn't deserve that, but happened.